Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I am Nicola Palmarini. I'm the director of the UK National Innovation Centre for Aging, which is the entity funded by the UK government to promote innovation. We're not funded by the Ministry of Healthcare. We're funded by BASE, which is the Ministry of Industry and Innovation. We operate through two organizations, NICA, which is for profit, and Voice, which is a community of older people who engage in the discussion about aging and longevity, which is not for profit. We're hosted at Newcastle University, I think, because I just was hired when it was already been established as an entity, because the purpose was to avoid the magnet London, Cambridge, Oxford, which drags 70% of UK investment, which helps us somehow to be innovative also in the perspective. We're doing 85% of our business abroad. I really would love to be one of your partners in the future. I'm a professor of practice also at Newcastle University on population health. And before there, I was in Boston with IBM Research and then at the MIT working on AI for healthy aging. So today, quickly, I'll try to drive you about what we observe at the center, giving some highlights and I hope some ideas and maybe some stimuli about what we think it could be relevant in the business you're bringing forward. And what we see, it's more or less on the intersection about what is happening at the global level. Because the topic we're talking about today, and the fact we have yes representative here, I think it confirms it's just because global. Very briefly to set the stage, just if you didn't realize, by 2050 we will have 31 countries that will have the same age of Japan and Italy today. I'm Italian, so I just see this as a kind of experience coming back from my background. China is important, so my first recommendation to you, keep an eye on what they're doing. Don't think they're, because it's a far different culture, they're different from us. They're doing a lot of innovation in the space. By the way, the numbers they already have inside the country today, they count 220 million people over 60. We're gonna be the number you see here by 2050, meaning that they are, even if they're not there in terms of ratio of the population, they're there already with the size of the population. Which leads us to my second point. Start thinking about a global entity, which is the little planet we're living in, as 2 billion people over 60 living there. 2 billion, over a number that by 2050 will be roughly between 8 and 9 billion. It's a quite high percentage that I'm sure I didn't represent correctly in this map, but at least give you the size. What we have learned so far in these last 50, 60 years, looking at ourselves getting older. The first thing is that we're mainly aging in a better health. So we're not only getting older, but we're getting older healthier, which I think it's something that has a lot of implication about our trajectory of aging. The second is that all of us in this room, we're aging differently. Postcode is one of the differentiator of your aging, simply the postcode. If you just go to London, Tower Hamlet, Chelsea, there is 11 years of a healthy life expectancy differences. If you go to Chicago, these years are 32. It's the place in the world where we have the highest discriminations between healthy aging of a population between some areas of the city and the neighborhoods. Meaning that this is just one of the indicators. Meaning that I think you should also to see and think from this perspective when you're thinking about your development. And third, just to get back anyway, and third, aging is far more malleable than it was supposed to be, meaning that we can tweak aging, we can change it, which leads us to one main important thing, which is the first thing I really would like you to bring home today. We're not anymore in an aging society as we keep on describing it. If you read the magazines, you read the newspapers, still the silver economy, still silver. We're just looking for an economy that is looking for people getting older. It's switching to a longevity economy, where people are also living for longer. And longevity helps us to, let me say, change the meaning of the word aging. So it's not simply observing an aging population, it's living this process of aging, meaning that longevity is influenced, as I said before, since it's malleable, throughout our journey of life. Meaning that you start thinking about an aging population from the start of an aging population. And if you are born somewhere nearby where there's a heavy industry and factories, what you have, your mother has or had breathed at that time implies your longevity trajectory and your aging trajectory. I know it sounds obvious, but I think we have to start thinking in this perspective. Now, when you think about old people, you classically have this image. And this is a picture I took myself. Also, I had this thing. Someone is doing a business out of it. If you're not Italian, I translated it for you. So just basically, people is getting here. So someone is making business of the idea of we have aging. And the people that we think we're envisioning, just like these people, when I say something about aging, the first thing that pops to your mind probably are these people. My question to you is, what about this one? Do you see them around yourself? Do you see these people while you're traveling, while you're going to on holidays, when you're just meeting them in the restaurants? It's us which are getting older. These people is us. It's not them. Okay? So it's important that we start looking with the eyes of ourselves in the process of aging, like the people around us. And there's something happening also from a narrative perspective. The photo models that we celebrated in the 80s as the icon of beauty, they're getting old themselves as well. Meaning that, I don't know if you notice, but the Me Too related to aging is coming up. So you have to change your narrative. Be careful on how you're using and discriminated eventually in your words about aging, because there is a wave coming. And if your brand is dealing with people out there, you should have to be aware that there is this new wave coming up as the Me Too happened. I think it's going to happen sooner than what we think and expect. You know the numbers, but just to remind you, that's McKinsey, is not me, that is suggesting that these are the population that will drive the economy. And what we do, we keep on investing on Gen Z. Why? Tell me. I really would like you to tell me why you keep on investing on Gen Z. Because the idea of, and not yourself, sorry, I think in general, but 500% more than all the other age frame combined, I think it's quite crazy if you think that the old idea that we have in marketing is just that you gain them when they're young to keep them forever. Just like a Gen Z will stay with you as a brand if you do something wrong in your ethical thing, and maybe someone in an office in South America that did it, not yourself in Europe. But then the values of some of your companies out there could be challenged, and then they will change your following your brand. So I think it's time that also, besides the bare economic power, we see from a different perspective. The final point is about if you're 75 years old and you're not feeling that age, why we should have to keep on investing on people that we think have that age. It's called technically equivalent age. So we all know that someone who was born in 1970 and it was 70 at that time, today in 2024, a person which is 70 years old is very, very different from someone who was 70 in 1970, even biologically. So not only because the world changed, but biologically we are start being wired differently. And technology, if you think it's a commodity, it's something which is influencing heavily our synapses in our brain. So we're different. Thinking that when you think about who's going to retire or live in the senior house, is not the same people that you're looking and targeting today. So what are some of the implications? One of the implications is that why I should have to buy things for old people if I don't feel old, or live in a place that is for old people if I don't feel I am part of that community, I don't feel I'm part of that population. Now, implications that are relevant. There is one which is more important than everything. Longevity is mandatory. It's not something that we would like or not to do it, because we need to thrive and help the economy to thrive. You know, we're not making children anymore, basically everywhere in Europe. I think in Belgium is 1.7, Italy is 1.3. We're a lot lower of 2.1, which is the total fertility rate. It's the lowest level on top of which you have a generational recharge, let me say. Meaning that there are two numbers out there. We need to keep people healthier for longer, first for the economy. It's 1 year of a healthy life in the US is between 35 and 50 trillions. Contribution to the economy. And the second element is about 1% of working people in UK could bring up by 5.7 billion the GDP of UK. Just two numbers to let you know that it's not just a nice thing to have to be healthy. It's important for our future and for our economy. I don't know if you noticed, this is really a change for Americans. For us in Europe, we tend to stay in our homes until we're 30, more or less, at least in Italy. It's not, it never happened in America. The people live in, when they're 18 years old, they go. It's changing, meaning that housing is changing, meaning that generations now, 5, are living together in the same home. There is a revolution about how people is going to shape their future. People want to stay with people that are their peers. And literally, 3 signals are more than a proof here. These are 3 things that happened in the last year. So communities which are getting together to live and age together. So they are building their own villages. This is really a change. Tell me if you know a company that is supporting with a mortgage the creation not of your home, but of a village. And the guys on the far right were so smart that they built a company, they asked funding from the government. They got £10 million just to build their own village. So there are new ways on how people is thinking about their own future. If you think the traditional housing, probably should have to take a flight right now, go to Zurich, or where they're opening. These are the embassies, I'm sure you know them, but literally they're changing the game on the concept of housing. Yes, it's still for the upper affluent, but they're quickly getting into, let me say, classic middle class type of offering. And they're changing from a place where you live to a club. And it's literally, I think, leading the way on housing is going to happen. About time, if you need me to remind you what's ahead of us, those people that I told you before, they will have 50 trillion hours of leisure time ahead of us, which means that they could see this way, or you could see it this way. So who has a lot of time to think about the future? Then the other thing it's important you remind that we are going to change in later life. Don't think that you're this way today and you could be this way tomorrow. And I just took 2, let me say, very extreme examples. But these people changed. Somebody biologically, the other one socially. And it's the same person. So divorcing in later life, for example, it's something you should have to consider, especially for women, who will be far more challenged than men later in life. Finally, cities are becoming a place where we can do a lot more. Since we're living in cities, since you're caring about real estate, cities could become the provider for longevity. So think about how you can empower, if you follow the previous chart about buildings of longevity, well, everything can drive longevity. And in UK, we have this dry January where people in January tend not to drink. It started 10 years ago. We start having the first data, how this thing is changing socially, the impact of alcohol over people. So people tend not necessarily to drink less, but to communicate the fact that together we can drink less. So my final point about why we keep on talking about the 118 trillions. This is Arthur Doolittle chart. I think it's 2 months old, so quite updated. This economy we're talking about, it's 118 trillions. And we keep on selling things to old people, like they're about diseases. We're the life around them. So I have 3 answers to this question. The first one, we're ageist. So discrimination is something which is within us. You should not to feel guilty, it's happening. It's all of us. I mean, we never thought that aging was good. We always think young is good, getting old is bad. That's the mentality we have. But as I said before, it's changing because we're becoming older more and more, meaning that we'll see ourselves as the target of discrimination. Find me a guy which is older than 35 in any BMW commercial, and when they put somebody, this is Schwarzenegger, it's just like a dumb guy, okay? There are few companies which are targeting this new wave coming. This is an example. This is Body Shop, which completely changed their naming of the products. It was called Drop of Youth in the beginning. Now it's called Edelweiss, because they realized that there's something happening out there, and they are not anymore anti-aging. By the way, my challenge to you, go back to your home tonight, open your, in the bathroom, your drawers, that's mine, and all the things framed in yellow are anti-aging products that me or my wife have bought. Check it out yourself, because we do it without even thinking about it. The second reason is that the longevity economy doesn't exist. Sorry for the French, it's a bullshit. It's an invention because it's made by many economies. In fact, in companies, in industry, they have a trouble in addressing it because it's not an industry. If you go to Microsoft, IBM, Amazon, or whatsoever, they don't have aging and longevity as a vertical. They have healthcare, they have transportation, meaning that longevity is horizontal. It touches all the economies. So you must be able to see it. That's why we are building the longevity economy. So the first example I just put you here, just took 3 classic things that happen in later life. Are you staying home a lot of time? Is there a gaming industry that we ever consider for an aging demographic? Look at the size of that industry and the growth of that industry. The second, what about pets? When your children leave home, pets becomes your children. Hence, there is a huge, let me say, drive on this economy. It's called petgevity. And see how much we spend yearly buying things that are not necessary for our animals. It's a 1,000 roughly pro capita average. And third, what about understanding what's happening in your life? Are you in the garden? Can we understand ever getting older while you're just pruning your roses, for example? And you see how big is the do-it-yourself market out there. And the second is the classic classification. We're still thinking about in generation, which is crazy, let me say. It's time that we see how the generations are changing, are becoming one main big generation. Also because if you see from this perspective, look what pops up. This is a brand which doesn't care about who you are, doesn't care if you're a Gen Z or a millennial or a boomer. And by the way, they have the same interface from Alaska to South Africa. When you log into Amazon, there's one interface, the same for everybody, and it works. Finally, there is an emerging market, which is longevity. This is big, guys. I think it's important you consider it from the healthcare perspective. Jim Mellon is one of the biggest investors. You literally have 3 people which are investing heavily in the space of aging and longevity, specifically on longevity, and Jim is one of these 3 guys. He says, well, we put money in crazy stuff, bitcoins, marijuana. Are we sure that we're not missing the biggest of the biggest of the biggest one? And there are signals that are happening. Jeff Bezos invested some of his own money in Altos Lab. These guys in Saudi Arabia started putting heavily funding in the space of longevity. We know that Sam Altman put some money of his own heritage in Retro, which is a company. But let me show you the right one, which is a journey. Evolution Foundation is a foundation, not for profit, established by the PIF fund in Saudi Arabia. Now, originally, in my previous chart, they stated 2 years ago an investment of $100 million in longevity for the next 10 years. Then they changed the game, and in November 2023, I was at that conference in Riyadh, they announced that $1 billion per year forever. So they're putting $1 billion every year forever. In what? In biology of aging. So they're heavily investing in understanding what are the root causes of aging, how can slow down the process of aging, how you can reverse the process of aging. So it's happening. And it's happening in a scale that never happened before. Now, Evolution Foundation is the second biggest investor besides the NIH in the United States in longevity. Meaning that there's this huge flow of money that will change completely the perspective about how we're gonna age in the future. So if I said before by 2050 will be 2 billion over 60, I think we should have to start thinking 2 billion over 60 mainly healthy. Because the mission they have by 2030 is just to achieve a higher quality of life that we never experienced before as humanity. Now, if you need a confirmation of what I'm saying, if you go on the Alphabet page of Alphabet, you will see there is only one active link, only one. The full page, Larry page, Sergey Brin, they just put the whole page, it's a classic introduction. The only link which is active is the one on Calico. Calico, founded 2013 by Google, is their longevity company. So my final remarks are you ready? Are we ready for, first of all, a consumer that probably will live forever? And it's immortal, paradoxically, not live forever, let me say, in terms that gonna live biologically forever. But that consumer is completely different from the consumer we had in mind before. So my first recommendation, just think about from this perspective. And second is, are we ready to invest in our own future? That's what Jim Mellon somehow is trying to say, says, Bitcoin, marijuana, what about ourselves? So, if someone says, the longer I live, the more beautiful the life becomes, my point to myself and to yourself is, so why do we have to stop when the best start? Thank you.